last night on the live feed, I do one at 9 o'clock every night on YouTube. Brandel jumped on there and I was showing these IV pouches, these 500 IV pouches. This is one of the first pouches we made probably 30 years ago at least. And it's just a pouch, and it has elastic running 2 directions, and a 500 IV fit on one side, and then all of the other components and some first aids on the other, and then you had a pocket here on the front where really guys put cans of Skull or Copenhagen is really what went there. I guess it goes back as far as even dudes with cigarettes. But Brandel's like, hey, those are awesome. Surely you did Coyote. And I'm like, no, because nobody likes Coyote. In fact, everybody hates Coyote. And they really should call it Coyote shit because it looks like shit. But Brandel wanted these, so we're going to do a video. And I figured while we were doing the video, we would just show you guys how we make these. And I know, there's plenty of experts that are going to be like, you're doing that wrong. But for every one of you assholes, there's 1,000 dudes watching, and there's probably 10 people that will gain something from this. I watch YouTube videos. I've been making this stuff 35 years. I watch YouTube videos now and see kids doing stuff, and I'm like, holy cow, we've been doing this the hard way for 35 years. So this is a 500 IV pouch, and I'm going to build this and show you what this build looks like. And usually when I have work, we keep the hook separate from the loop, velcro, and then I've got my pieces here. And when I put this stuff together, I usually do it by process of elimination. So I'm going to take the pieces that I know what they are for sure and build those, and that's going to give me less pieces to have to figure out what they are. So here's the sample that I'm looking at, and that's what we're building. Here's all my pieces. All right, I'm gonna put the zipper on. I call these zipper lips. They're just the pieces that the zipper goes on. And I'm using a single needle machine. A lot of guys will use a double needle machine to put zipper on, or they'll even use a kind of like an attachment. It's like a folder that actually does it all in one pass. I'm gonna show you the way to do this if you don't have all the equipment. Truth be told, we only have a couple of double needles in the building, and typically when I put zipper on I still do it the old school way. I'm actually faster that way, having just done it so many times over the years. When we started, didn't have a double needle, didn't even know attachments existed. For the first couple of years I was making tactical gear, I didn't even know there was an edge taper. I was literally taking edge tape, rubbing it on sharp edges on gym equipment, wearing the paint off to kind of pre-crease things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in work side up. The exterior of the material is outside, the coated side is underneath, and I'm going to got my zipper upside down here. I'm just going to apply a little tension on here, not a lot. If you apply too much tension on the zipper, it'll actually shrink the work up. And while I'm doing this, because I know I have 2 of these, I'm building 2 pouches, so 4 pieces here. I'm going to go ahead and just run this in chain here and catch this at the same time. Just like so. That's that. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off so I have less bulk to deal with. That's the excess of the zipper. And while I have this, I'm going to go ahead and put the next pass in this side of the zipper. Now, this is the wide side of the foot. This is the small side of the foot. This is not even a zipper foot. They make one that is elevated so that it runs right across here. This is the same foot that we've used on all SOE product for 35 years. We've never even used a special zipper foot, and this is how all of our stuff is made. So this, it'll really just follow itself. Like I'm not even looking at the work. You don't want to do that. You want to check it, because sometimes if it starts moving, you'll run off of it. When I started building this stuff, there was not a servo motor. There were no electric motors. With electric motors, you can turn the speed very far down, so it's really slow, and you can teach anybody to sew. It used to be a clutch motor, so if you gave it too much gas, it would run away from you. That is not the case nowadays. There's no reason that somebody cannot sew. And when somebody knows how to sew, it's like riding a bicycle. They will always be able to sew. Now, zippers. There's not necessarily a right or left side to this, but there is an opposite side to this. So I'm going to peel this now that this is off and I've set my tracks. I'm going to take this piece and put it on these, and they're going to be the opposite sides. And what I mean by that is if I'd have just ran all one side, when you go to zip it together, it doesn't tooth up correctly. It pulls, and it's just it's not correct. When you see it, you'll know it. So now this side here. Now also, because I separated this zipper, it will tension a little different. So be careful when you're putting these on here. I am no longer dragging this through my fingers and pulling tension. I am just letting this run over my fingers here. And the reason being, when you apply tension, it will determine how much this work pulls up. And when I put these side by side, I want them to be identical, not one smaller than the other. Now this one here, I'm going to run it straight in. And I just work, you're just going to take bites. I look at it as a couple inches of work. 2 inches, 2 inches, right? Because if you're looking ahead or you're looking behind, it's just like driving. You're going to steer, like being on a motorcycle, where your head goes, you're going to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip this and run that other smaller, narrower foot down the inside here. A lot of guys will do this in just 1 or 2 passes. If you're not really good at sewing or comfortable with your particular machine, just do it this way. This will give you a nice, finished, repeatable every time. So for here, a lot of companies you'll see, if you want your zipper exposed, you're going to pull the work all the way back and you're just going to top stitch this. That's not what I want. I want the protection of this right here. So I'm going to run this like this. And the way I'm going to achieve that is I'm now on the underside of the work, the coating side. I'm going to flip this over, and you're going to be able to see right where the material is, and I'm going to line those teeth up with that. And I'm just going to come right inside. You can do the outside, you can do the edge, or the inside, either way. But here, now I'm going to apply a little bit of attention, because it's going to hold the work in place. And I'm just going to take bites at it. I'm grabbing like 3 or 4. You can do it whatever you're comfortable with. Just like so, and I'm going to do the same thing here. Now, you can sew straight across, but when you cut it, those last couple stitches are going to come undone. So when I change from one piece of work to the other, that's when I back tacked right there, just 1 stitch, 2 stitches. That'll hold it in. So when you cut it, it's not unraveling, and you don't have to worry about that when you go to put the zipper pulls on. Now you might be more comfortable sewing inside or outside, right? I'm sewing right now on the outside of the machine. So what I mean is you could just flip this and do the opposite, or you could cut it off and come back from the same direction right here. I tacked it right there. And just use your fingers as guides. Into the work there, tack it. Come in here, tack it. Now, if you're also really worried about it, you could flip it over and sew it from the other. Well, no, you couldn't, because that was the first stitches in that for your top stitch. So there that is. It's almost perfect, which by that I mean it's perfect because I built it, so you'll get there. Don't worry. Don't worry. If you're thinking you can't do that, you can, and most of the dudes that are thinking that they can do better, they can't. So same deal. I'm just going to run this down here. If you see from this edge here, right here, you can see where that work is right there. So I'm just going to pull that right back in there to right where, once I start it, now it's tacked in. I'm going to needle strike down. That's like having a third hand, guys. The foot, sometimes when you pull too much, it'll slip, but that needle in that work down position, that's a third hand. Now you can line this up right where you want it, and then just start sewing. And the same. Also, when you sew something together and you find yourself needing to cut it out, use this as a third foot. If you're working, holding, and cutting, you inevitably will expose your knuckles. I have cut through almost every knuckle and had to have stitches in almost every finger, always from taking work apart. So use that as a clamp. That will prevent that. When you have sutures in your hands, I know that you think you can still sew, and you can, but what you will find out, as I did, when you move sutures, the wound does not heal, and when they remove the sutures, the wound will not be closed. So just be aware of that. You will do more damage to yourself when you're learning how to do this industry, repairing other people's stuff. When they bring you something, number one, you're never going to charge enough to do the modification. And number two, when you cut yourself, you are out of work for 6 weeks. So the real answer is, a lot of guys take work that they feel like they have to because they don't believe in their craft enough yet. You'd be better off just making your own shit and selling it than trying to repair stuff for other guys. It's like getting shot up to get in a rap game. You go and you do these jobs that you don't want to do because you feel like you have to. It's like when you build your first product, you always compare your product to some name brand. Mine's just as good and it's this and that, but I charge less. Number one, if you're comfortable with the price you're charging, you need to double it. And number two, when you're building your brand, don't ever speak another company's brand. People ask you about it, you can give your honest opinion, but I would be as brief as possible. But don't even say another company's name when you're trying to sell your product. And here you can see I'm on the other side now coming back, so you can sew either direction. And there's that tack at the end, there's that tack at the beginning. And there's that. Now, while I have this work in my hand, and I have now separated, I want to make sure you keep them in pairs, right? This side is this side is this side. If you zip them on, and you zip this side to this side, they do not zip up properly. They'll be more difficult, they'll have more drag, they'll be a little louder. So, I'm going to grab my pulls here. Here's something else that you might not be aware of, because a lot of guys are buying parts. There are entire companies that have set up just buying bulk material and reselling to small hobbyists. Those guys are making a killing. If you wanted to get into this industry, the tactical gear industry right now, I've told a dozen kids, I'm like, I wouldn't. I would buy material and resell material, because you're literally doubling and tripling your money selling the material. But I'm going to show you this. I use a Vislon nylon number 10. It's a YKK number 10 zipper. It's the biggest in the industry you can get. There is not an 11 or a 12. It's the biggest you can get without going to a tooth zipper, like a wetsuit zipper, traditional tooth zipper. And then I use a metal pull, so dissimilar. I don't use plastic on plastic. I don't use metal on metal. I use metal on plastic. I don't ever have a corrosion problem. I've never had a zipper failure problem. In 35 years having this product out there, the only time we've ever seen issue with a zipper, it is bullet holes through there. We've seen a boat prop. We've seen IED stuff destroy shit, and fire. Like, you're not ever going to, I've seen muzzle brakes too, old DTA mill brakes shooting off bags, and they walk back with the recoil, and the muzzle brake blast will blow bags apart also. But we don't ever see an issue with the zippers. Now, you can save money and buy just a zipper pull. I buy the zippers with the pulls on them because that gives me a handle. It's a couple cents more, but that adds up, you know, if you're doing 20,000 zippers a month. But this gives me a handle. Yes, we have jigs. I've seen them. I'm well aware of all the stuff that's out there to put zippers on. This is the fastest way. We've got jigs out there. This is how I put it on. I'm just going to come in here. I'm going to get this on here. Then I'm going to come in here and get this on here, right? And then I'm going to look. Where am I? Okay, this one's further forward. This one's further back. I'm going to walk this back till they're both where I want them. Right there. Not quite. Hear those teeth? Right there. Pretty close. Let's walk down, see where we're at. Pretty perfect. I can live with that. Plus, I'm going to conceal a good 1/4 inch of this work, so even if they're off by 1 tooth, 2 teeth, it doesn't matter. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going and throw that sucker on there. Get this out of my way. Okay. Back it up. Is it even? Pretty even. Am I even here? I've got a little too much right here. Let's bring this left side further back towards you. There. Now I'm perfect. That's how I want that to be. I'm going to pull these in. We're going to cut these off with cutters. If you're cutting these, you can use dikes and whatever. We used to literally twist them off with pliers. They scratch the finish on these when you do that. I use front end cutters. If you don't know what front end nips are, they're great for removing zippers. This is trash, but the extra money that we pay for those zipper pulls is greatly saved in labor putting these zippers on. So right here, same thing. Let me just catch that there. One, two, there we go. Now, if you get to a point where you've tried to put it on, and it's a little learning curve when you're learning. If you have a problem, and what it usually is that you have a lot of fuzz right here. You can just kiss that with a flame. That'll burn that fuzz off, and that thing will usually go on, no problem. Now, I usually work with a ton more light. I like so much light that there's so much light it's creating shadows off of the machine. So then I'll put another light to kill that shadow. And where I typically work, it's 15 degrees hotter because I have so much light. So these shadows here are really slowing me down. I typically don't work with this much shadow. Now, also, once you've burned that and you've bust that fuzz off, if it doesn't work, just cut one tooth off of there and restart with a fresh work surface. And you'll find that it'll usually line up, no problem. It'll lace up, run right in. Okay, so I still want to come one more. Perfect, okay. So there's that. Now what's my next pieces, my elimination? I know that these are the bottom plates, and I'm going to build this with an inside and an outside. So the bottom piece right here is going to be two layered, dual layered. And here's why I do that. Number one, it's stronger right there because it's double layer. That's not really why you need it. We could do it in a manner single layer, and it would be plenty strong with this, especially since the IV pouches and stuff are sitting in a cradle and there's no sharpness. But a lot of guys use this as a utility pocket. So here's how I'm going to do this. This sits here, right there, outside up. My work's going to go here, and then outside down. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to catch, I'm going to get my work as close as I can, and I'm just going to tack this in, and I'm going to run right across here. Now, when you get to the zipper, slow down. Just chug through that zipper. If you're going to break a needle or knock this machine out of time, that's where it's going to happen. Now, a lot of guys learning to sew, they're using lighter weight machines and stuff. This is a compound walking foot. This is a Consew 206. It's considered a heavyweight machine for this type of stuff, but really it's a medium weight machine. So I'm just going to lock this in here, just like so. Slow down when you travel across the zipper, and you'll be fine. So same thing over here. I'm just going to put that there. I'm going to try to fold this work up inside so I'm not fighting this, and I'm going to catch all of these right here. Same thing, I'm going to tack these in. Now, when you start building your patterns, you can allow for how much you want concealed. I like to have more work concealed inside because I want my work, a lot of failure points you see in gear is literally just because they're sewn so close to the edge of the material. When put under tension, the thread rips through the material. The material literally just disintegrates on the edge, especially if you don't have a good coating on your nylon, on your Cordura. So we build all of our bags with about an inch of material around them over what I would, originally have done over the years. And what that does is it just gives us much more meat inside. That inside seam allowance is bigger, we never see our stitches. We never see our material unravel on the edges, and we never see our seams bust out. And it's very negligible. Like, yeah, over years you've used a lot more material, but when you're buying material by a couple yards, it'll be fine. You're not going to notice it. So here this is. That raw edge is going to be inside here. I'm not even worried about burning these zippers because I'm ½ inch or more inside. Now I'm going to pull this, and now you're just going to sew it. And I want to sew it from the outside because that's the part you're going to see. I'm going to catch all of this right here. I'm going to tension this so that it's even on top and bottom, and I'm just going to tack this right here in. Now I'm going to come across here, and I'm going to catch that zipper back and forth. So that's tacked in there nicely. I'm going to come across here. Okay, so there's that. Now I want to keep this material even as I'm sewing it. And now I'm going to pull it out of the way. I'm just going to pull all on this work here, and that's going to even this all up. Same thing here. I always cut my threads as short as I can. And while it's attached, so I'm actually pulling, the thread's still attached, I'm actually pulling, so I don't have to use two hands, I actually have a third hand by that needle being struck down. Okay, here's the outside of this. This is what it looks like. Maybe. So there you go, there's your outside, there's your top stitch. Clean, everybody's happy, everything's good. This is a little wider here, probably because I put a little more material here on the zipper lips. You're not going to care about this. You could sew it all together, nobody's going to know. If you're really worried about it, you can just cut a little bit of that off at an angle. You will never know it in the finished product. Now, I also have some Velcros. We're going to put this Velcro right here in the middle of this. We're not going to measure this. We're not going to worry about any of that. We're literally going to find half right here, edge to edge half. I'm going to grab this. I'm just going to run this colored pencil right through there, just like so. And you can measure it if you want, but I'm going to eyeball it. I'm going to make me a little cross there. I'm going to target it. I'm just going to fold my Velcro inside, and I'm going to put this on here. What this Velcro is here for is I'm going to put a grommet through this Velcro. This pouch goes back to the 1990s when we were working with Force Recon and Range 130 and SOTG and those guys. All of the SOTG packages, they had a SEAL platoon come through before they could deploy on Westpac. So what was happening was the MARSOC, well, prior to MARSOC, but the Marines were shooting 1911 45s, and that was fine. But when the SEALs started using these pouches, because we use a big grommet, we use a number 4 grommet, which is giant. It's bigger than anybody in the industry uses to this day, as far as I know. It evacuates water very quickly. But what was happening, the SEALs were putting loose 9mm in here when they were on the range, doing fighting while wounded or malfunction drills, and every now and then a bullet would fall out of here. So the fix for that was this patch of Velcro. Grommet goes through there, and we give them an opposing piece of Velcro to cover that grommet should they want to use it for very small items. So if you're using it for nuts and bolts or roofing screws, that's how we do that. So you can still have drainage if you want to use it in a maritime environment, or you can negate that with that patch. That's what that's there for. Okay, so there's that. Like I said, pieces of elimination. We don't need to build both of them. A lot of times it's faster for me to build two things than one single thing, just because I can run them in line. And when you figure out timing on a single item, if you build multiples, you will find that your time per item goes down drastically. So there's that extra opposing piece. Just process elimination, guys. If you're not sure what all your parts are, especially if you're doing sewing of a lot of products, you sometimes will forget what was what. So a lot of times I'll see employees counting items. They're like, do I have 26 of everything, right? You don't need to do that. Just start building it. And when you have extra pieces at the end, I pay a lot of labor while motherfuckers just stand around and count shit. You don't need to do that. Don't count it, just build it. If you're not sure what the parts are, process of elimination. So there's those extra 2. Now, I'm gonna have I don't know why I lick my hands like this is paper. I still do that out of habit. 1, 2, 3, and you know, as I was just telling you not to count it, but that's not really what I'm doing. Okay, so another thing you will see with guys building these, we did it too. Everything was double layered. The front pocket was double layered, the back of the pouch was double layered, everything was double layered. Guys always said SOE is bomb proof, but it doesn't have to be, right? That's the only thing they can complain about is it's built too good. Like you heard people say that all through history of my company. And it was very heavy. I was like, we're never going to that 500 denier Cordura stuff. The truth is the 500 is strong enough. It's what, maybe 30% less abrasion resistant than the 1000. We've been using it for well over a decade, well more than that. But the truth is that the definition of the print is much higher. The print on the 500 looks way better than the print on the 1000. The product looks higher end and it looks more expensive with the 500 Cordura. The 500 Cordura costs you maybe a little bit more. I don't even know if it costs less at this point, but it's definitely lighter when you're moving around 75-yard rolls. It's heavy. So our females can move that stuff if they need to. So let's see what pieces are what. I know that we hadn't built this pouch in over a decade, and we recently revamped the pattern so that it just flowed a little easier. So my pattern for my pocket is actually the same pattern as the body here. So what I'm going to do here is just roll this down right here, double hem this. I've used something else too, guys. I build all this stuff. I don't even know what a lot of the terminology is for a lot of this stuff because I never took a sewing class. So I'm going to roll that over twice. I think that's called a double hem with double layer. We'll roll that right down there. While this is in my hands, I know a piece of Velcro needs to go here, so we will just process of elimination. We're going to take this and put this right in place. I'm going to tack it. Tack it at the beginning. Follow it around. Another thing too is how many stitches per inch. If you are sewing something and you find that it's overshooting it or falling short, adjust your stitches 1 or 2 and you'll find that it will actually start to fit properly. I really sew a lot faster, but Brandel just had to adjust his camera because I'm sewing too fast for the camera, so we'll try to slow this down a little. Now when you change your thread, your bobbin thread or whatever, if you're changing colors or spools, don't unthread all of this thing. Just cut your thread right here, tie it in, and then take this and take the tail and just pull it. Now pull gently when you do this, especially the first times until you're used to doing this. When it hits that thread and it stutters, this will slide across your hand and cut you to the bone. That thread will touch your bone. So pull that through there. I'm going to wrap this around here 2, 3, 4 times. And I'm going to run this long tail through this hole right here in the bobbin. And when I start sewing, I'm going to hold this until it just rips off of there. I'm not quite there yet. Now, when you do your bobbin, I'm going to throw this in here. I'm going to find this. And the same thing when you change this thread here. Don't take all your thread out of your dual tensioners and everything here. Cut it on the back side down here. Tie your new one on, and then pull it through. And again, I cannot stress to you, especially when you're learning how to sew this stuff, do not just pull on that. That thread will cut you all the way to the bone. So, there we go. I had run out of thread right there. I'm going to come back to where I started. You can go a few stitches back. I'm going to come back to that first beginning of the line. And I'm going to tack it in right there. Now a lot of guys, they'll do a box X, they'll do all kinds of stuff. And the truth is, they don't know why they're doing that. They're doing it because they saw some other piece of gear. When I started, I was looking at Eagle gear, and you don't know why there's a box X there. And the truth is, there's a box X there because they had a automated tacker, basically an automatic program machine, and it sewed that pattern. That's why that pattern was there. So there's that. Now I'm going to take, I have extra pieces. Oh, that was the pocket. So I made a pocket out of that. We're good. We're still good. So this here, I'm going to make my lid, this lid, and you can do all kinds of stuff. You could just cut this round these corners and edge tape this. I think it looks trash. I think it looks cheap when you edge tape that. So I'm going to make this lid here. Is this a square? It is a perfect square, so it doesn't matter which side I work off of. What I'm going to do here is, and you could sew this around the perimeter inside out and flip it and poke your corners out. On a smaller piece, it's faster for me to just hem it first. And building both of them is where it gets fast, because I don't have to cut this thread. I could just run into the next piece of work and just go like that. It's faster to do that. But I'm just going to hem this. Get good at being small and hemming, and you'll be able to build anything. A lot of guys want to use attachments and call it. Just get consistent to where you can do a small hem. And I'm going to apply pressure as this walking foot is pulling this back. I'm putting tension here. You can pull on it, or you can just drag, put tension with your finger on here. But you want to make sure your tension is the same and consistent. So get good at that, and get good at threading your machine. When you're not good at sewing, you're going to break needles, you're going to have all kinds of things happen. You might not be the best mechanic or have access to a mechanic. So when you get burrs, you will break your needle plate, the throat, the needle even. When we started sewing this stuff, I didn't have needles. I got a card that had 10 needles when we rented a sewing machine. Like, I didn't even know where to buy needles. So I was really good at rethreading machines because they broke thread all the time. When you get good at rethreading a machine where you can just do it second-handed, while I'm changing a bobbin, while I'm changing this bobbin, I'm already got this one over here. When you get fast at that, none of that will bother you, and you will be an amazing craftsman when you have the money to actually have all the proper stuff. Okay, so right here, I'm going to make this very small. So these are the edges. I'm just going to bring this right here. And this is the lid for that flat pocket on the face. I'm going to go ahead and cut this thread. Typically I'll do that, keeps it out of the way of the next stitch. It doesn't get tangled up anywhere. Okay, so right there, I'm going to back up my work. And now I'm going to catch this extra edge here, which conceals that entire raw edge. Completely unnecessary. The pouch will never fail because of it not being concealed. It's just a little touch. It's why it's literally the difference between being able to build a $10 pouch and a $100 pouch. It's just the attention to detail. You're going to have a name for a lot of things. Decide early what you want your name, what you want those things to be. Okay, so I'm just going to mark this here and here. That's the height of the pocket. And I'm going to take this raw edge here, and I'm going to come right down below that, centered up. And I'm going to sew this right here. And now that raw edge that's on the back side, it's also going to be concealed. Now, this foot hangs on that thick work, so I'm just going to walk right past that. I don't remember if I backed up here, so I'll tack it there. One thread, two thread, one, two. And when I cut my threads, I'm pushing down with, I'm pulling up on the thread, and I'm pushing down with the scissors. Okay, so no raw edge exposed. There's the lid. Again, elimination. We have this work right here. We might as well put it on here. Oops, forgot the Velcro. We can still get it on there though. Pull this out of the way. Oops, forgot the pull tab. Oops, oops, oops. Okay. So, I'm just gonna use this as a pull tab right here. I'm gonna go ahead and tack this in here, because this is the part you're gonna pull on. 1, 2, 3. Again, pull up on the thread, push down with the scissors. This one's attached, pull on it. Again, down and up. Watch those scissors, you will cut the... I don't care if you cut your fingers. Like, it's not, you guys can cut your fingers all you want. I care about the blood on the Cordura. I don't want to have to fucking clean it or wash it. That's the concern, right? As you see, I have a gash. I hit a hot knife. I rearranged one of my workspaces, and my hot knife was always centered. And from 7 years in this building, moving to that point and running that hot knife, I stuck my hand to grab something and hit that knife, and it cauterized it and cut it all at the same time, but it was still bleeding. So I was wearing a Band-Aid for the last couple days when I was working with material. And now, because this is tacked in, I don't have to back tack on the Velcro, because a lot of thread through that Velcro will start to fray and rip that Velcro. So that's why I tacked that other piece first. You'll see a lot of guys when they're doing hobby stuff, they put just a ton of thread in things, and they don't know why. They think they're doing it because it makes it stronger. In a lot of cases, when you sew it to a certain point, it actually weakens it. We built super kit bags a decade ago, 15 years ago, we built super kit bags, and I sewed them all single stitched. We were headed to SHOT Show. We had 6 of them, and I remember the cutoff weight for Southwestern used to be 75 pounds. And we were over on them. We had 80 and 85 pounds in the bags. So I ended up paying an extra, it was only $50 per bag then. I paid $50 over weight. But all those bags were single stitched. We didn't even edge tape the inside of the seam. They were literally single stitched and then tacked where we started and stopped. We had 85 pounds in those bags. It was all soft gear. It was all web gear and stuff we were taking to SHOT Show. And we stayed in a condo there in SHOT Show, at SHOT Show in Vegas. And we were on the 3rd floor, and we wanted to do a video. James was starting to do YouTube videos back then. Maybe it was a little less. I think it was 15 years ago. We had multiple dudes up on the 3rd floor landing. We took those bags. They had longer handles. We put a guy on each side, and we went 1, 2, and we threw them in the air as high as we could onto the asphalt parking lot. Not a single one of those bags busted a seam, and that was all single stitch, nylon 69 thread. It was probably 1,000 denier Cordura back then. But that's all single stitch. We triple stitch all those kit bags and edge tape them. But most guys just throw a ton of stitching and stuff, and they don't realize why they do it. And the reality of it is it actually puckers the work up, and it just makes it look like somebody who can't sew sewed it for the most part. They don't know how to tension it properly. Okay, so here's the back. We used to do all of our back pieces double layered, especially if we were putting pals on them. They don't need it. Trust the material. We do not have fabrics nowadays that are not good. All of our fabrics in the industry are very good. So I'm just going to find my spacing here. I'm assuming this is probably an inch. I'm saying it's an 1.25 inches. You will also have a favorite ruler. If you don't, more power to you. Don't develop a favorite ruler or a favorite tool, but you will. That's why I have this ugly ass ruler. It's super bright and I can see all my numbers. And when you get a ruler, you definitely want a ruler that has inches and centimeters, because if you can't find the center, if you can't half it on the inches, you can almost always half it on the centimeters. And if you can't, you can just move it to where it's in the center and make your center mark. Because everything you do on these products, for the most part, like this right here, you're going to work off of center. 6 1/4, 3 1/4, so I'm just going to go right there. You'll get to where you can just draw a straight line. You'll be able to eyeball it. You will get, if you do this for a long time, you will be able to tell from a distance when something's just 1/8 of an inch off. You'll just see it. You will also learn sewing machines. When I walk through the factory and I hear a sewing, I'm like, hey, that machine's out of thread. Your machine's out of thread. Your machine needs oil. Like, you will just know. Just like in the movies when you hear that pistol and they say it was a Glock, you're like, no, that was a USP. You'll just know. So there's my center, there's my center. I'm gonna come off of here. I really didn't even need center on this. Here's how I'm gonna put pals on. There's all kinds of fancy ways. Everybody's laser cutting now. The truth about laser cutting is it's about time and labor and skill. You see a ton of products out there in the tactical gear market, and when you look close at them, there's only 2 or 3 6 pieces of bar tack on the machine. The person assembling it does not have to know how to sew anymore. It's laminate laser cut material that does all this. Now, we've always tacked it in like this. I'm gonna sew back over this a bunch so that one doesn't need a bunch of tacks in it. And nowadays, it's just laminate cut. They don't have to even sew pals. But if you go back a decade ago, you had these giant flatbed machines that were automated, and you had these clamps. Man, you'd be in a clamp for sewing body armor. You'd have $40,000 in the early days just making the clamp that held the work down, and the machine would go and it lift and go to the next one, and that's all they were doing, was just doing pals fields, right? Molly. The horizontal piece is pals, and the spec on pals is 1 inch on 1 inch, 1 inch webbing, and all of your slots are 1.5 inches. That was the standard. There's different shit now, definitely. It doesn't have, there are other ways to do it now. But 35 years of business, we never brought in an automated machine to do any of that shit. Now these ones I'm going to travel a little more because they're not going to be sewed over, and I'm going to use this as my gauge, right? This is my spacer, and I'm going to work this way, and I'm just going to travel across here, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. We used to sew 5 lines of stitching and everything. You don't need 5 lines of stitching. And when you start doing this stuff for real, you look at things too, like I'm out of bobbin right there. You look at things too as wear and tear on the machine. This machine running right here, I sewed on it last night. We brought it out here this morning to do this. But I haven't oiled it. It's a little dry right now. It's kind of crunchy. You can kind of hear it. And I don't want to dump a bunch of oil in here while I'm sewing on this coyote material here. I'm also not sewing fast. When I sew fast, my needle moves so fast that if I leave it in the work when I stop, it will melt a permanent hole in the work. If you touch a needle when you're sewing, and you're sewing quickly or sewing for some time, the needle will burn a hole in your hand. It'll literally blister you and leave a white mark across your finger. You'll see smoke when you're traveling on there a lot. Again, I'm going to hold this tail over here on this bobbin. Until it pulls off of there. And then also you can get a gauge, right? You know that this ruler is 1.5 inches, so I don't have to measure once I have my center line there. I know that I can just mark this, just like so. And then also travel, direction of travel, right? If you're working left side and then you flip all your work's going to be pulled this way, and then when you flip it, it's going to be pulled the opposite. And because they're opposite, they're going to look very drastic if you're not very precise, if you're not holding your work. And when you're learning to do this too, you might find that it's definitely easier to do dual layer, because the dual layer doesn't pucker up as much as the single layer, especially on the 500 material when you're setting like pals fields like this. We've seen guys do all kinds of shit too. I noticed like London Bridge employed a ton, and good on them, man. They employed a ton of disabled veterans. So they created jobs for a lot of those guys, and they would actually hot glue the webbing on in place. They'd make jigs where they'd set it and glue it in. They'd staple it. They did all kinds of stuff. And you can use those tricks if you need to, but you will be a much stronger craftsman if you don't do all that shit. You'll see people using all kinds of spring clips and shit and pins. We don't do none of that shit. Just get to where you can do it, because that's a crutch. If you develop your skill using those things, you're never going to be where you can, and you're going to be so fucking farther retarded, like slowed back. You're going to be years behind the game by using those crutches. Now there's my pals field, right? We don't use, it's Molly gear, right? We don't use Molly. We don't ever put a strap or a snap or anything to fail. By now, it's like buying a car, right? You know you got to put gasoline in the thing. When you buy modular gear, dudes buying modular gear, they have all kinds of attachments and stuff. Okay, so there's the back. We know we've got this elastic. We have 2 pieces of it. So on the back is going to be the horizontal piece. We're going to take this and just tack this in. We're going to have center and then a little bit higher than center. And again, having multiple pieces, I wouldn't cut this. I would just sew right into the next piece and cut it. Much faster that way. Okay, there's that. This is the front right here. That rubber band just hit that cut on my finger. You guys can use all kinds of tailor's chalk and pens and pencils. We've tried everything. Currently the girls out there are using these, it's almost like a mechanical pencil, but they're a crayon pencil, because they don't have to sharpen them. And we've got pencil sharpeners out there. When you use a pencil sharpener, you eat pencils like crazy. I literally use a razor blade. If you get the pencil too sharp, it breaks it or the lead breaks out. We've used everything out there. The Crayola colored pencils are what we've used for 35 years and always gone back to. Yes, you can buy a less expensive colored pencil, Rose Art. They don't, when you sharpen them, they break. Like it's almost impossible to use them. Spend more money, get the Crayola pencils. We've used every lighter out there. Yes, we've used candles, we've used auto lighters, all kinds of stuff. The best lighter out there is the Bic lighter. Yes, it costs a little more. Yes, you can buy a lighter that costs half as much. The fuel doesn't burn the same in them, and they just don't last. Buy Bic, pay your money, buy Bic lighters, and buy Crayola pencils. You can do all kinds of other stuff, and you might find starting out that something else works perfect for you, and I'm just grumpy and set in my ways. But there's a reason we've been doing these. We have tried everything. We have new guys come in and they want to do these things, and I'm like, we just let them try it. And then when there's problems, and there's always problems, then we recommend that they do it the way I want it done. Me telling you how to do something is letting you come to the decision without me twisting your arm and making you do it the way I want it done. But I'm pretty good at what I do. Well, I'm very good at what I do. Okay, we're done. So, also, when you're starting your business and you have some guy taking issue with your stuff, telling you how it's too expensive or whatever, go ahead and sell it to him and get his attention. Just send him all the parts. Let him sew that shit together. You go, you wanted it for $60 and it costs $250. Sure, I'll do it for $65. Just send him a box full of pieces. When he's like, what the fuck, man? Well, that's the $65 piece. You told me you could do it, so make your video and show me how to do it better. You can refund them later, but it's well worth doing it. All right, a lot of guys spend a lot of time to find center by measuring. Just mark your work. Just take the edges, find center. Move that out of the way a little bit. Now, colored pencil leaves a mark, and over the years we have seen crybabies like, what are all these marks? If you take colored pencil and you just rub it against your shirt or your pants or cloth, it comes right off. And the real answer is, if they're crying about it, they're not using their shit, because when you use your shit for real and you get mud and blood on it, it's all going to be the same color. The real guys, when first Iraq and second Iraq kicked off, the Marines came in the shop and bought everything we had. And we were literally running 24 hours a day building gear. And then the SEALs came in and they're like, we'll buy whatever you got. And I'm like, I don't have anything but black. And they're like, we will take it because we're just going to spray paint it. All right, so centers, right? There's a lot of ways you can do this. You'll find which way you like. And some people just sew better left-handed than right-handed. Their weak hand is their right hand dominant or whatever. I'm gonna take this center and line it up with this center. And when you're learning to do these like ovals or squares or anything, I've got girls out there that can literally travel 360 all the way around and this thing will be indexed perfectly. I still don't have that so much, and especially with the 500 material, not as stiff. And also, when you start doing this, you will find that there are seconds and overages and all kinds of stuff that people will start emailing you. Hey, I've got, 10,000 yards of Coyote Brown. Always ask for a sample. My question is always, is it heavy-handed? I want my material stiff. And they're like, yep, it's polyurethane coated, it's DWR, and you get it. And when you cut it, the edges fray because there's not enough coating, or it's a coating you're not accustomed to, right? So always ask for a sample, especially when you have tons of material that you're gonna buy. Get a sample. When you like it, buy it. And if you look at your work while you're doing this, I'm not stretching this. I'm just working a couple of inches at a time. And what you will find is, when you have the face and the back on this thing, it will just index perfectly. It won't be all cattywampus. So there's that center. I'm going to take the bottom center in this and do the same thing. So I'll have I'll have top, bottom. I'll have the bottom quarter sewn and the top quarter opposing sewn. There's that excess right there. Be aware where I had that excess there. I'm just going to sew so it's hanging over so I can flip it. So I'm about, quarter. Now I'm just going to sew the rest of the way around, travel this. And you'll find too, if you have too much or too little, you can usually kind of push some excess in, or you can stretch the material to make it fit. Especially if you did it in quarters, it'll still come out even. It might not be perfectly even, but once it's put together, you won't be able to tell. So here I am just sewing back over, traveling, so I don't have to break stitching. And I caught that right, caught that little bit right there, that one little thread. Be free. And I know somebody's like, ha, he just cut that thread and didn't go back. We're going to edge tape it. It's going to be okay. And I know somebody's thinking that because that's what I would have thought. I did sew a little far in here, but the edge tape's going to catch that, so we won't see it. All right, same thing. And when you go to do this, if it's zipped together, they're going to clock better. It will be easier for you to do it if you unzip it. That way you're not carrying all this bulk when you're trying to sew it, but do it in quarters. Where is that? There we go. And you can needle strike this to kind of get it, once you have it edge to edge lined up and index to index, you can just strike that needle down there, and then that's a third hand once that needle's in the material and the meat of the work. Now I'm coming up on that lid, which is kind of in the way. Pull that back there. am I lined up? I am off, see? Because I didn't do quarters, so I've got some traveling. I'm pulling on it probably. I'm actually off here by about, I don't know, under a 1/4 inch. So I'm just going to take this small screwdriver. This is your best friend. If you don't have one, find one. They used to give these away at every tire shop. I know some of you guys have probably never even been to a tire shop, but every nerd out there also has it in his pocket protector. We're actually going to have 10,000 of them done with our logo. So if you're a sew guy, hit me up. I'll send you a fucking screwdriver. If you don't have one, just find one. You'll find your favorites again too. So I just push on the work a little bit. It puckers up under there, and it is now sewn down. Killed all my light there. Every couple of years I go and have glasses made. I got a friend that's an optician. I'll have some badass Oakley Ducatis made or whatever with custom lenses. And I'll put them on and I'm like, holy shit, I've been blind for years. I can see. And I'll sew something. And I also like to have eye protection. When I'm sewing thick work and doing production, I will wear like Oakley M frames or something. I've had needles stuck in my nose. I've had needles stuck in the skin under my eye. I've had it stuck through my lip when they break. So, I mean, if it's your eyes, you can't replace them. Well, I mean, you guys can't. I can replace my eyes nowadays. I mean, modern medicine and my money. But what I'll find is when I stop sewing and I take those glasses off, I can't see anything. And I know that if I continue to wear the glasses, I will never be able to see without glasses. So I've had 3 sets of glasses over the years that I've never worn. But it is to the point, I'm 51 now, and it is to the point where I'm going to have to start wearing glasses soon. And yes, I'm well aware of LASIK. I'm told that whatever is up with my, the type, whatever I have going on, LASIK won't take care of it. Kind of hanging on that extra meat right there from that pocket. It's just this foot that I have on here. Okay, so we're all the way together. I won't even bother to look to see if I messed up. We'll just go ahead and commit all the way. Sew this sucker in. Whenever I stop, I always want that needle down. That's a third hand. I can pivot off of that. You can also, you can get machines that have needle positioning sensors and automatically stop needle down or needle up. You can set them. This thing is a workhorse. I've got 52 machines in the building. I'll bet 45 of them are Consew 206s or some rebranded version of that. So no electronics on this machine. All right, there is your pouch brandle. We'll edge that up. But for all intents and purposes, this is done. Now from here, these would all go usually in batches of 48 or so. And we would hand them to one of our guys out here and they would run through. The lighter is your friend. A lot of guys will send out product with threads all over them. This product looks clean. This product, as uncleaned right now, is cleaner than many companies that build tactical gear. So again, if you're comfortable with your prices, you're not charging enough. And if you're the dude with threads and stuff all over your product, you're never going to be the high-end guy. So get in the habit of that, right? If you don't have calluses on your finger, you don't really sew. There's that. Just like so. Now we're going to put a grommet in it. We're going to cut these and put cords on them. And there's your pouch. And there's your pouch. So my calibrated eye says that's about perfect. Just slip. Okay, pull it down on the side. Let's do perfect hole right there. Washer down. These washers are really, this is really big for these machines. When you start doing grommets, we used to set every one of these by hand. We would actually cut an X, put the grommet, and use a hand setter. And about every 30 to 45 days, we would destroy that hand setter. And you could buy, there's different quality of them, but we would destroy the good ones. You could even get a grommet set at Walmart, which we did in the very beginning. And then you find, these are called durables, right? All the hardware and stuff, it's called durables. And you'll find the company that makes these and sells the setter. And then you'll eventually get a kick press, and they have air operated presses and all kinds of crazy shit. You want to injure yourself? Like, when we've had guys run this literally through their finger and punch a hole that hole cut their fingernail and halfway through their fingers. So you want to fuck yourself up, this is the place to do it. And it happens while you're standing talking to somebody. Where are your hands? Make sure you know, right? So like I was saying, this is really overkill for this machine to be doing this. That's a big hole, but it does it perfectly, and it rolls that grommet perfectly. Does not turn. There's that. And then those cutters we were talking about. Did you catch that? Did you catch that? I can't even do it again. I don't even know what happened. Nope, can't duplicate it. So cut. There's your first cut. Roll it again. Cut again. The reason we're doing that is I don't want to scrape the finish off of that thing. When I'm doing a ton of them, you can just cut it, flip it by the hardware, get it to your right side if you're right-handed. I would rather have extra trash to throw away than destroy the product or mark, because you get crybabies. 5% of the dudes buying this, those are meat eaters and war fighters. Their shit's going to be dirty. The other 95, that's, you know, people that want their shit to look nice. A lot of guys, we used to get a ton of comments, not so much anymore, but why do you cut the pull off? Well, it's very loud, it jingles. So we put the 550 on there. It's positive, you can catch it with gloves, it doesn't make noise. And a lot of guys, they'll take all of the pulls off their gear and they'll put their own special knot or their cord or whatever on there. They'll use colors too to denote different things. So there's that, there's that. All right, we'll put some air cells in it and take a picture of it.